Well, I do. Hello, everyone. Hi, boobalas. Hello, hello, you sweet people. Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. It's it's so insane. We have to laugh. I don't mean to make light of all the crazy things that are going on right now, but gosh darn it, you got to admit, they even had comedy in Auschwitz. People could joke and they could laugh even in the worst of times. And gosh darn it, these are pretty bad times for the U.S. We have a revolution that's happening in America, and there is validity to the populist movement in the sense that the people of America are angry. They're angry because their paychecks are not worth what they used to be worth. They're angry because their schools are terrible and unsafe. They're not getting real answers about global warming. And yes, 6 million immigrants came into the United States at a time when it's questionable whether or not we could absorb them, given that a lot of Americans were themselves in crisis. Now, as a heart centered remote viewer, I try to stand back and I try to look at things as objectively as I can. And it's as if the children stormed the castle. And we've used imagery like Gulliver's Travels, where it's this idea that of constraint. The card is the Eight of Swords that we used. And this has led to a kind of chaos because that anger and that populist movement, instead of being utilized in ways that could have been constructive, got hijacked by a lot of wealthy people who seduced good people over to Trump's team. And so, rightly so, in the populist movement, if you look at the 1980s when we were trying to denuke, and we still are trying to denuke, if you want to save money in DC, start in the Pentagon, right? We were marching to denuke, right? We were marching to stop nuclear weapons, which was and still is one of the greatest threats, if not the greatest threat to our survival, right? Particularly now with what's going on with the fall of Russia and Putin, what Putin has done to the world. So all that tension and anger was mobilized, manipulated, and they voted for Trump. So now we have a situation where a lot of people like this idea of plundering the treasury, going to get what's mine. It has a kind of pirate feel to it, right? So we've talked about this idea of it's like a pirate. You're going to go in and you're going to get that treasure. Yeah. But the problem is you have somebody like Elon Musk, where Tesla is under investigation for something like 200 separate fraud investigations, everything from safety violations. So what's he want to do? He wants to throw out all the regulations like safety. It's like the saying goes, the cat guarding the fish. Would you let your kitty cat guard the fish? Would you let your kitty cat guard the tuna? Think about that. I don't think you would. Not my kitty cat, because my kitty cat loves tuna. And thank you for the tuna treats, by the way. Those of you who sent the tuna treats, yeah. She likes those. All right. So going forward energetically, one of the great things about being an empath is that I get to fall in love with psychopaths, and I truly enjoy that. You know, I was in love with Putin for a good year. People got worried. There were people that wanted to do an intervention, but hey, this is how empaths, professional empaths, we have been used by every great man, and we love every minute of it. The amount of information that we got from Putin. Let's see, by being Putin's psychic lover, what did I find out? I found out that he was a megalomaniac. I found out that he thought that he was the second coming of Christ. I found out that Putin probably had some kind of methamphetamine addiction and he had become increasingly paranoid, but he was mixing drugs and that fed his delusion. I found out that the mafia had been funding the church, and the mafia and the church were basically one and the same, and that they were hiding some of their criminal activity in the basement of the churches of Russia. I found out that Prigozhin was his supplier of not just food, but good quality drugs. And because Prigozhin had dirt on him, that made Prigozhin a very dangerous and powerful man. I found out that Prigozhin had bankrupted the Russian treasury, and for that reason, he was fired and had to be removed. I found out that Prigozhin had gone over to Ukraine and was doing a deal with British intelligence, and British intelligence had conned him into running a coup and marching on Moscow, but alas, he was stopped. Yeah, it's been good. So, alas, my love affair with Putin has come to an end, and we were able to write the 5 phases. Yes. So we know that Putin is on his way out. Say bye bye, Pootie. Can you say bye bye, Pootie? No? You don't want to say bye, but don't give it. Stop that. Stop being so bloody happy in the face of World War III, Dr. Whimsy. And by the way, it's partly your fault. We're headed towards phase 4, baby. We've knocked off phase 1. Phase 2 is in the works. We got Bibi Netanyahu talking about paying people to get to safety and then dropping the bomb on Hamas in Gaza so that we can start the rebuild. After World War III, after World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, within weeks, flowers were blooming in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So after phase 2, flowers will bloom again in Gaza. That's all I can say. And I hope that we can reduce the number of lives lost during phase 2. Phase 4, we move on to Putin is going to collapse. You're going to start seeing a lot more activity on the rebuild of Gaza, a lot more stuff being released in the public. I can go ahead and say that. And then we move on to Putin is increasingly paranoid, isolated. And then finally, we will see the fall of Iranian leadership as probably a military coup takes over. All right.